Hello, welcome back to another episode of the Element and Architecture podcast. And today we are going to gather to delve into one of the most revolutionary buildings we've ever discussed on this podcast. This building existed only for a few decades and no longer stands after a tragic event. You probably know what I'm talking about if you're American. It is, of course, the original World Trade Center Twin Towers in New York City. Even though it doesn't stand in New York City anymore, I feel like it is still important to address this masterpiece of an architecture. So, designed by the visionary Japanese architect Minoru Yamasaki, these iconic towers were more than just regular gray boxes. They symbolize the progress exhibited by American capitalism in the 20th century and stands as the cornerstone to modernist and minimalist architecture. And please join me as we explore the architectural design features that made the Twin Towers a marvel of engineering and design. So, we are going to be discussing three features that I feel like are important for to talk about when we're discussing the Twin Towers or World Trade Center in New York. So the first aspect is the verticality of the building. In this podcast, we've never really talked about any particularly tall buildings, and I feel like addressing the verticality of the buildings is important, as it's one of the reasons why it became so symbolic, and it also influenced a lot of the design choices that made by the architects. Another aspect we are going to be talking about is the minimalist aesthetics, or the overall just aesthetics of the building. And the aesthetics of the building overall is very minimalistic. We're going to see how Yamasaki's life choices or life experiences and heritage influenced that. And then finally, we are going to be briefly talking about the structural engineering and innovations this building has, such as the structural designs, materials of the building that is being used. So these are the three aspects that we're going to be talking about. And let's start with the verticality of the building. The verticality is one striking aspect about the building and is achieved as the architects devised a way to build higher with innovative structural designs and innovative material choices. And the most apparent aspect of the Twin Towers' verticality was their extraordinary height and maybe their mass. So they stand at 417 meters, and they were amongst the tallest structures in the world at the time of their completion. And the Twin Towers were envisioned by Yamasaki to be an integral part of New York City skyline, and it was envisioned to be an iconic landmark that would redefine the city's identity. And the verticality of the design, the tall building design, allows the towers to stand out amongst the surrounding buildings and become a recognizable symbol of New York City. The Twin Towers were also symbolic to American capitalism and innovation and progress, and its massive scale and verticality only achievable with the innovative technologies at that time. Basically, their mass and the vertical height is a very important and symbolic aspect about the building. And then we are going to move on to the aesthetics of the building. that is basically the main part for today's videos. I'm going to be talking about how Yamasaki's life, as well as his experiences, his heritage, is going to affect the build. It's going to affect the design choices, the design features of this building. So the minimalist aesthetics that we see in the World Trade Center, well, in case anyone doesn't know what minimalist aesthetics are, they're basically very, very simple aesthetics that is made on purpose. And so the minimalist aesthetics that we see in the World Trade Center was shaped by Yamasaki's experiences and philosophies as a Japanese architect. His heritage played a significant role in shaping the design approach of this building. What do I mean by this? Well, let me explain. Japanese aesthetics, or traditional Japanese aesthetics, emphasize simple and austere or plain beauty. And these traditional Japanese design principles can be seen to be incorporated into the design of the Twin Towers, where the Twin Towers, if you see any pictures of the Twin Towers, there is, of course, a minimalist aesthetic with the simple shape and the simple form and the simple and minimalist texture and no excessive ornamentation and such. So let me talk about the floor plan, or the form of the building itself. So the floor plan of the two simple square areas, hundreds of feet wide, with only slightly chamfered corners, creates a sense of simplicity that is exhibited in the towers. And from far away, they only appear as plain, simple boxes with the plain, simple rectangular shape. And that is basically an example of its simplicity. The design choice with the structure and the form of the rectangular shape really emphasizes the simplicity and the simple minimalist structurality of the building. And basically, in any other structure we see in this podcast, we've never seen something as simple as this, just two rectangular boxes. And in addition to the floor, we're going to be talking about the facade as well as the choice of materials here. In addition to the floor, the closely spaced vertical steel columns appears with a silver ornamented texture from far away. So if you look at any pictures of the buildings from far away, you can tell they're basically just silver like a silver surface from far away. And that contributes to the minimalist aesthetics influenced by Yamasaki's adoption of Japanese simplicity and basically this austere design principle. Additionally, the aluminum alloy of the steel facade of the building interacts with the natural light to create the reflective surfaces on the facade. So basically, for the material of the building, they used aluminum alloy, which is reflective when being with the sun, and that basically creates the effect of the reflective surface that corroborates to Japanese design principles, which emphasizes or prioritizes the use of reflective surfaces and its interaction with natural light. So we can see that not only is it minimalistic, but also the choice of material also just corroborates to traditional Japanese design principles. And in addition to the choice of materials, not only was the World Trade Center a representation of Yamasaki's Japanese heritage, as we've talked about with all the design principles that is derived from traditional Japanese design principles, it's also a combination, a fusion between Japanese heritage and Western influences. So the World Trade Center, you can see it as sort of like a fusion between Western and Japanese influences and design features. So Yamasaki received architectural education in the United States, and his exposure to sort of Western design principles allowed him to blend modernity with his Japanese heritage. What do I mean by this? The Twin Towers represents a fusion of these fusion of these influences, where Yamasaki incorporated modern construction techniques and materials, while also strives to preserve a sense of cultural identity. And this fusion of cultures is seen in the tower's sleek modernist design, characterized by the use of steel in the facade of the building, which are materials of the latest technology made available for skyscrapers, as well as the scale and mass of the two minimalist towers. And this is basically the contemporary aspect about the buildings, which are popular in Western culture in the 20th century. And such contemporary design elements with the steel facade and the large mass and scale and verticality are accompanied by the demonstration of simplicity of traditional Japanese aesthetics, as we talked about with the simple gray and basically plain rectangular boxes. And not only is this simple, but it's also really complex. This sounds very contradicting, but I will explain what I mean. So what do I mean by this? Well, Yamasaki had a philosophy unlike other architects in the 20th century. Basically, he believed in aesthetics over function and the balance between simplicity and complexity. And such complexity can be seen from the incorporation of beautiful elements in the World Trade Center. So these simple elements are basically from the form, which are the rectangular boxes with the shape, and also with the materials, with the materiality, with the steel columns that runs down throughout the entire building to create this silver surface that appears accompanied by the form to be like a simple gray box. So that's the simplicity aspect. But what about the complexity aspect? Well, the intricate steel arcs that we see in the bottom of the World Trade Center are designed to serve as only a touch of ornamentation to the design of the building, while the cleanliness and the simplicity of the you see this sleek and the simplicity of the overall buildings serves to create a fusion between minimalist elements and intricate ornamentation. So the ornamentation can be visible up close with all this silver lining, the sleek silver lining running down that are closely placed. And also these silver arcs, they all serve as sort of like details and ornamentation that adds layers to the building. So if you see any pictures of the World Trade Center up close, you'll see it's actually very detailed, unlike what you see from far away, which are just plain boxes. You see up close that with the closely placed steel columns, you actually get a sense of layers with all the ornamentation on the exterior facade of the building, with the silver steel columns, and at the bottom it eventually merges to create these arc shapes. So this corroborates to Yamasaki's philosophy that emphasizes aesthetics over functionality, where he also added ornamentation in addition to this simplicity and minimalism. So that is it for the minimalist and aesthetic minimalism and sort of aesthetics of the building. And overall, we talked about how Yamasaki basically incorporated traditional Japanese elements with the simple form and the simplicity being added on by the materials of the building, with the steel materials, and also how these steel materials also serves to corroborate as reflective surfaces. Also, we've talked about how his influences in the Western world also influences his design choices with the new steel materials, and also the new sort of structural engineering techniques only in the Western world, and also the sheer mass and scale of the building are all influences from the Western world. And furthermore, we've also looked at the ornamentation with the exterior facade, with all the arcs created by the steel columns of the building, and the layers that are actually on the steel columns actually adds a touch of ornamentation to these buildings up close. So these are the aesthetics aspect of the building. And then we're going to be talking about the structural engineering and innovation aspect about the building. So the Twin Towers are demonstrations of the innovations of structural engineering, and the towers utilize a structure known as tube structures. That is one example of the structural engineering innovation aspect. And what do I mean by the tube structure? Well, it's basically a structure where the building is designed to act like a hollow cylinder that is cantilevered with perpendicular to the ground. And this may sound abstract, but let me tell you the function of this structure. This design choice, with the innovation of this design choice, allows resistance against lateral loads such as seismic pressure, wind, and impacts, and it serves as a demonstration of structural engineering methods incorporated into the design of these two buildings. And furthermore, another aspect about the structural engineering innovation of this building is the stability of the building, which is achieved with the massive concrete core in the middle of the building that basically makes the building stable and creates this, basically allows the verticality and mass to be achievable. And not only is the structural engineering a huge part of this building, but also the innovations in its material. As I've talked about already, it's the buildings are made from a combination, or constructed using a combination of concrete and a type of steel known as aluminum alloy. And this material is an economical and stable material in large-scale construction. And this economical aspect about this building, the economical aspect about this building, also corroborates to about the material. Actually, the economical aspect about the material corroborates to the simplistic design of the building, which is what we think of when buildings prioritize function over aesthetics. So actually, it appears to be simplistic and minimalistic from far away, the World Trade Centers, but they are also being added a hint of ornamentation, which is what I really like about the building. The texture of the building, which is the ornamentation part, along with the fused with the simplistic and minimalistic aspect, and also the verticality, the mass of the building, work together so well to create these great boxes with the silver coloring that, if you look at it closely, is heavily ornamented. So actually not heavily ornamented, but slightly ornamented. So that basically concludes how all the design features of the World Trade Center works together very, very well. And that is it for this episode of the podcast, where we talked about the World Trade Center, from the verticality of the building, which is about the sheer mass and scale of the building, to the basically the minimalist design and also the ornamentation of the aesthetics of the building, with the use of the silver material and the simple rectangular form. And then finally we talked about the structural engineering aspect, the amount of technology and innovation it takes to basically construct this building, the use of structural engineering, and also the use of certain economical materials like aluminum alloy in this building, which also connects to how the building corroborates to the architect's Yamasaki's Japanese heritage, with the use of the steel columns. And these are all basically the features of the major features of the building. And that is it for this episode. And in the next episode, we might explore another architecture. And that is it for this episode, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.